The long-awaited mass production of the Su-57 is coming to the Russian military. It's taken more than 2 decades for this moment to come, from the initial concept of the 5th-generation jet to its current incarnation into a combat aircraft with incredible capabilities, potential and appearance. Let's take a closer look at what the latest and most advanced Russian fighter by the Sukhoi company is all about. A unique combination of speed, stealth and super maneuverability. The Su-57 multi-role fighter currently is the most modern Russian military plane. Its production code is the T-50, and initially it was called the Prospective Aviation Complex of Frontline Aviation, or PAK-FA. It's been entirely designed and produced in Russia. This is a super advanced 5th-generation Su-57 aviation complex. It's a brand new, unique platform, as its developers call it. And this platform is not building on the legacy of its predecessors, like the Su-27, Su-30 or Su-35. It is to become a parent to all the next generations of fighters and unmanned aerial vehicles. The Su-57 is a single-seat jet. The duties of the co-pilot are now performed by artificial intelligence. The plane combines the functions of an interceptor and a strike aircraft. It's filled with the best technologies the Russian aerospace industry has to offer. Powerful engines, excellent maneuverability and first-class avionics, including an active phased array radar. It's able to reach supersonic speeds without afterburner, maintains a stable and controlled flight at high angles of attack, and can fly at supersonic speeds at an extremely low altitude. It takes off and lands in a traditional horizontal manner. It's got an extremely short takeoff and landing distance. I can't say how short it is. It's a closely guarded secret, but presumably the length of an aircraft carrier flight deck should be enough for it to take off and land. So the jet can be adapted for the Navy without the need to be specially modified for vertical takeoff and landing, like, for example, the American F-35B or the old Soviet carrier-based Yak-38 and Yak-41 jump jets. Modification for vertical takeoff negatively affects the plane's speed, range, load capacity, and can even damage the landing surface of an aircraft carrier due to the hot exhaust from the nozzle. So all that, once again, speaks to the versatility of the Su-57. The jet is equipped with an impressive arsenal of high-tech weapons on board. Its missiles range is twice as long as the previous generation missiles. Along with the aircraft itself, its missiles are covered with a special coating that makes the entire arsenal practically unnoticeable to radar. The jet has a target detection range of up to 200 miles and simultaneous tracking of around 30 targets. In the future, it will be equipped with hypersonic weapons.
This plane will serve far into the future, to the middle of the 21st century. It has enormous modernization potential. On the basis of this magnificent aerodynamic platform, it'll be possible to create and develop new types of weapons. It has all the characteristics of a 5th-generation aircraft. At present, it'll be difficult to find a worthy rival to it.
Indeed, for a long time, the American F-22 Raptor was considered the most versatile fighter in the world. However, everything has changed with the arrival of the Su-57. The 5th-generation F-22, which has already ceased production, was created for the domestic market only. It's an air superiority fighter equipped primarily with air-to-air missiles. Later, the Americans created another 5th-generation F-35 bomber specializing in ground and naval targets. In the F-35, developers put stealth technology at the forefront. The jets become part of the F-35 program and sells in other countries, with parts also produced abroad. But the F-35 does not have the ability to effectively solve fighter missions in the air, and its maneuverability is inferior even to some 4th-generation aircraft. So back in the early 2000s, the Russian military set a task for the Sukhoi company to create a multi-role fighter that would be superior to both the F-22 and F-35 aircraft. So here it is, all in one. It's been designed to gain superiority in the air, meaning it's an interceptor that can employ guided air-to-air missiles. It's also a bomber, being able to strike ground-enabled targets. It's a flying information center that provides other airplanes of its group with necessary data. And it's a perfect close-range dogfighter thanks to its outstanding maneuverability. Plus, it's got that magnetic beauty.
However, the supermaneuverability is not a fundamental requirement in the West because their doctrine focuses more on long-range combat. But experts say in case of a real air war, planes will inevitably have to close the distance and go for a close-range dogfight. So the Russians say they have built an aircraft that excels both in long and close-range combat. That suggests the Su-57 combines and exceeds the abilities of the American F-22 Raptor and F-35. Ironically, and it's a pure coincidence, of course, if we add up the numbers 22 and 35, it makes 57. Even though they all are the Gen 5 jets, a strict comparison is not really appropriate, as they all are different and serve different purposes. What is true, though, is that any of them could hypothetically clash with any other in the sky.
Most people would agree now that all sides have to do absolutely everything to prevent the world from learning which country's planes are the best. But the more I learn about this machine, the more I admire the technology.
In fact, the Su-57 is superior to the American fighters in maneuverability, speed, range and flight duration. The Russian fighter can reach speeds of 1,600 miles per hour, while the American F-35 clocks in at 1,200 miles per hour. Thanks to the ability to constantly generate oxygen, the flight duration of the Su-57 is 5.8 hours, almost twice as long as the American F-35, which can stay in the air 2.5 hours. The maximum combat load of the Russian aircraft is 22,000 pounds, while that of the American plane is 20,000 pounds. The maximum takeoff weight of the Su-57 is also bigger, 78,300 pounds versus 70,000 pounds. The service ceiling of the Su-57 is 65,000 feet, and the F-35 service ceiling is 50,000 feet.
The jet is being built as a stealth fighter thanks to its special radar-absorbent materials, coatings and shape. Its bombs and missiles are carried in special internal weapons bays. All that makes it practically invisible to enemy radar, including infrared eyes.
Plus, a special pixelated coating gives the effect of a blurry contour, which somewhat distorts the boundaries of the plane. However, some Western experts claim it's not as stealthy as its American rivals. Of course, radar stealth significantly increases the combat effectiveness and survivability of a plane, but without high flight performance and the full range of combat equipment, stealth itself is meaningless. The Su-57 has a combination of all those characteristics, and that makes it an absolute world leader.
Whether stealthy or not so stealthy, all the critical voices go silent when this machine starts to fly. Critics from around the world are wondering about the limits of the capabilities of this aircraft.
The supermaneuverability of the Su-57 comes courtesy of its aerodynamic configuration and twin turbojet engines. The aircraft is currently being produced with a so-called first-stage engine, and second-stage engines will be installed on the mass-produced versions in the not-so-distant future. The Su-57 uses a thrust-vectoring control engine, meaning its nozzles can deviate diagonally. This is a great advantage when flying at high angles of attack and while performing aerobatics. For comparison, the standard engine of the American F-22, the F-119 PW100 from Pratt & Whitney, can rotate its nozzle plates only vertically up and down. That simplifies takeoff and pitch at altitude, but does not make the Raptor equally maneuverable. It's obvious, though, that the outcome of aerial combat primarily depends on the skill of the pilot. These guys, the test pilots, are the ones who determine what to remove and what to retain in the planes. In order to set limits for combat pilots, they have to push their jets far beyond those limits, looking over the edge and risking their lives.
We are
the link between all the departments that develop various systems, equipment, displays, an information and control field. Every new generation of aircraft turns out to be more complicated, so our task is to make an aircraft easier for combat pilots. The more comfortable the pilot feels, the more effectively they fulfill their tasks.
When I became a test pilot, senior experienced comrades used to say that if, thanks to you, even a tiny switch had been installed on the plane, you didn't waste your life.
Lightweight and super hard carbon composite materials make up to 25% of the empty weight of the airplane. The ejection seat of the Su-57 is able to save a pilot at any flight altitude, even from the ground. The jet's equipped with a powerful locator called APAR, which is an active phased array system. Plus, there are also a huge number of receiving and transmitting modules distributed all over its body. that provides the aircraft with a long detection range, multi-channel tracking of targets, and the employment of guided missiles on them. The Su-57 has its own high-precision autonomous navigation system, which works regardless of whether there is a signal from satellites or not. It will lead the aircraft to its target and allow high-precision use of weapons. Even with no satellites, the Su-57 will never get lost. The question is now, are humans smart enough to pilot such a smart machine?
A combat pilot must perform a task with minimal distraction from secondary tasks and minor things, so it's necessary for them to interact with the machine easily. Therefore, there are so-called electronic assistants that eliminate unnecessary options, erroneous actions, and so on. All that thanks to the plane's artificial intelligence.
Since it's a war machine, it must fight, and it has already fought in real combat conditions in Syria, launching guided missiles and dropping bombs on ground targets. The NATO press was wondering back then what the fifth-gen fighters were doing in the local conflict. The answer was simple.
Any aircraft is taken seriously after it's been used in real combat. As a rule, any customer is always interested in whether an aircraft is in service and in which conflicts it's taken part. That adds status to the aircraft on sale.
The Su-57 is the newest aircraft, but it already has its history. So here are some of the main milestones in its life. The aircraft made its first maiden flight in January 2010. The fighter's first flight with a new second-stage engine with increased thrust and fuel efficiency took place in December 2017. During the operation of the Russian Air Force in Syria in November 2018, the Su-57 attacks terrorists with cruise missiles. In September 2019, the first joint flight of the Su-57 as a leader aircraft and the heavy strike drone Ochotnik or Hunter took place. In December 2019, the Sukhoi company lost one of the machines right before its transfer to the army. It crashed some 60 miles from the Komsomolsk-on-Amur plant in the Siberian taiga during a test flight. But despite some failures, the plane's design is now totally completed, and it is planned that by 2028, 76 mass-produced Su-57 aircraft will be in service with the Russian Air Force.
The more powerful the weapon, the more likely it will never be used, I believe. It's an element of deterrence, like any other weapon. We're not creating things to attack someone, but if it is required that we defend ourselves, we must be able to do that adequately and respond properly to all the modern challenges of science, technology, and aviation.
There's still quite a long road ahead for the Su-57. It has yet to showcase its enormous potential, and no doubt we will hear more about it soon, as it will definitely be on the radar of journalists and all those who admire the aviation industry.
And today, it's starting a new page in its life. Yulia Shapovalova, RT.